Jillian, I'm taking a vow of Raidraptory. Do not disturb me until I have unlocked the secrets of this deck. Come in.
Well, Joseph, it's been a month. What have you learned?
I am quite certain they are dark monsters.
So, do you just want to call Daimax?
Yeah, let's just call Daimax. Good afternoon, Jank enthusiasts. I'm MBT, and this is 10-Minute Testing. Today, I'm bringing you a very special TMT. It's a series of bird-themed dark monsters with an uncanny ability to swarm the field, putting up incredible combo boards. It's got multiple Towers-style monsters within its lineup, and it's been meta multiple times throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Most recently, it's seen success with setups that punish an opponent for taking any actions at all, lest they fall prey to their boss's lockout strategy. It's an archetype you all know. It's played by Daimax. Why don't we play Raidraptor?
Ow! Yeah, now we're talking! Yeah! Ow!
So here's the list, and okay, here's the deal. Previously, I took a look at a CSM winner's Raidraptor deck, which didn't rankle well with the community. This is one of the most well-supported archetypes of all time, and it's virtually impenetrable to build from a base of Bussy. As a result, this is Daimax's list, who I've linked in the description. They go way more into it in their own videos, and they were kind enough to lend me insight into how it is played. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck is the #1 place to go if you need a pack simulator, a card database, or want to read a wealth of strategy articles. They also post breakdowns and lists from every major TCG and Master Duel tournament, including the Master Circuit series. Give them a look at www.ygoprodeck.com. So with that, let's wrestle with Raidraptor. Raidraptor is just a really hard archetype to talk about. Like its spiritual predecessor in Blackwings, it's got years of support that basically just do nothing for the archetype at all. You have to wade through a 10-foot pile of bulk before you find anything remotely playable. What's more, due to Arc V shenanigans, it's got crossovers with the Phantom Knight monsters, but also has Xenolocks into Raidraptors specifically. It's super confused, and its end board is pretty much always changing as new designers decide these cards have to do something. Generally, these monsters facilitate a setup that weaves through main deck birds that mostly special summon themselves, provided you've already got a flock, into utility extra deck cards like Force Strix and Y Strix to ultimately convert low-rank Xyz monsters into high-rank Xyz combo enablers like Arsenal Falcon, using their suite of rank-up magic spells. The astute among you may have just realized that I described a series of combo enablers, but not where'd they go exactly. See, the arc of Raidraptory is bifurcated. Some duelists, just as a placeholder, we'll call them bad, use the rank-up magic to make DDD Duo Dawn King Kali Yuga on their opponent's turn. This locks your opponent from plays, a la Azathoth, functionally winning the game on the spot. To borrow a phrase from another bird enthusiast, however, this isn't all it's cracked up to be. You'll notice that turn skipping is already a central component of Centurion, a deck that's dick fuck nowhere. Turn skips are also possible in VW through the Mayakashi Trap, in Manadium through King Calamity, and for some reason none of these decks are even remotely playable. See, it turns out you can't commit to a turn skip if your opponent can just set 3 Labyrinth traps. The road less traveled by Raidraptor is a type of strategy that's been lost to the ages, unseen in a truly competitive capacity since Duelist Alliance, Towers Turbo. See, Raidraptor's main combo sets up not 1, not 2, but 3 Towers monsters. The only deck in the metagame with a similar capability, Pearly, loses to a very specific suite of boarded answers, and no one's packing sphere modes anymore. This decision, to fulfill a unique niche in the format rather than settle for a bad decks combo but worse, is detailed pretty specifically in a Daimax article that I'll link in the description, which I think is a good read for anyone jamming Beatrice a bunch of places it doesn't belong. So with that, let's get into the card by card. Recently, I've been doing this thing in 10-minute testings where instead of just reading the text of each individual card, I try to give you an appreciation for how the cards work together and what the end boards might look like. Unfortunately, there's two problems with this. Firstly, I'm pretty sure none of you have read any of the Raidraptor cards ever. And secondly, these end boards look different based on the number and type of extender that you happen to open. The short version is what you're trying to do is modulate a monster into Raidraptor Arsenal Falcon, and then use the Arsenal Falcon as link material for a Raidraptor Ystrix, triggering its effect. Through this mechanism, you can utilize the multitude of powerful extension effects that you have in order to get to a Raidraptor Ultimate Falcon and frequently a Rising Rebellion Falcon as well. You'll see how this plays out in-game, but again, it is quite free-flowing. Notably, the start of any of these combos is probably going to be making exactly Raider's Knight, so almost every hand is going to have to pivot through this specific monster before it does anything else. Let's go to the individual cards. We've got 3 copies of Raidraptor Tribute Lanius. During your main, if this card was normal or special this turn, you can send a Raidraptor from your deck to the graveyard. During your main phase 2, if this card destroyed an opponent's monster by battle this turn, you can add a Rank Up Magic Quick Play spell from your deck to your hand. You can't special monsters for the rest of the turn except Raidraptor monsters. Historically, this was used to send Mimicry Lanius, but we also send Fuzzy a lot of the time now. We've got 3 copies of Raidraptor Noir Lanius. During your main phase, if this card was normal or special summon this turn, you can target a Raidraptor you control and add a Raidraptor with a different level than that monster from your deck to your hand. It can be banished from your graveyard to increase or decrease the level of all Raidraptor monsters you currently control by 1. Now, this is a contentious card to play at 3. A significant amount of individuals are going to tell you that this shouldn't be played at 3 because it's the only dedicated normal summon in the deck that isn't full combo on its own. These people are trying to trick you. They want to see you lose. Any of the 14 extenders make this full combo through Droll and insulates Raider's Knight against Infinite Impermanence, which otherwise does kind of cook you. We've got 3 copies of Raidraptor Bloom Vulture. If you don't control any face-up monsters other than winged beast monsters, you can special this card and a Raidraptor from your hand. If you control no monsters, you can target 2 level 4 or lower Raidraptor monsters in your graveyard, including this card, special summon them in defense position, and of course you can only use 1 effect per turn and only once that turn. Also, you are locked out of anything but dark monsters. Managing the locks in this deck is difficult, and you will run into it almost every single game. This is one of the less punishing ones, but still something you should probably be abreast of. 3 copies of Strangle Lanius. If you control a dark monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except darks. If you control an Xyz monster with a dark Xyz monster as material, you can target a level 4 or lower Raidraptor in your graveyard, special summon it, but its effects are negated. This card is broken. 2 copies of Raidraptor Funny Lanius. If you control a Raidraptor other than Fuzzy Lanius, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if it's sent to the graveyard, like via the effect of Tribute Lanius, you can add a Raidraptor Fuzzy Lanius from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect of Fuzzy Lanius once per turn, and you can't special summon monsters the turn you activate either of these cards' effects except Raidraptor monsters. Now, this seems devastating to a deck that I led with has to summon a card called Raider's Knight, but good news, this card is a Raidraptor for some ungodly reason. Next up, we've got 2 copies of Mimicry Lanius. Once per turn during your main phase, if this card was normal or special summon this turn, you can increase the levels of all Raidraptor monsters you currently control by 1, and then during your main phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there, you can banish it to add a Raidraptor card from your deck to your hand, except for Mimicry Lanius. After that, we've got 2 Simorgh. Again, this seems weird because it's not a Raidraptor, but the secret truth of this card is that it's actually just Sakitama. If it's face up on the field, it's also Wind Attribute. Once per turn during your main phase, if you normally special summon a Winged Beast, you can reveal this card in your hand and then normal summon a Simorgh monster. And then if normal summoned, you can add a Simorgh monster from your deck to the graveyard to set a Simorgh spell trap from your deck to your hand. That is not an effect we're going to be activating. We just want the extra body. It performs a normal summon to do so, so don't worry about it. The other utility of this card is that it chain blocks Ystrix, and we would be playing 3 if we went up to 41 cards. Here's a card you might be shocked to see we are only playing a singular copy of, Raider's Wing. It's always a Phantom Knight and a Raidraptor card, and if it's in your hand or graveyard, you can detach a material from a Dark Xyz monster to special this card, but banish it when it leaves the field, and its effect is a once per turn. An Xyz monster whose original attribute is Dark and has this card gains this effect. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, so it sounds incredibly powerful. For instance, it's why Impermanence on Raider's Knight doesn't automatically lose us the game, but it's a little bit of a trap. This is not a very good extender. If you can summon it, it's good, but it requires you to have the gas to make an Xyz, which is already full combo. There are reasons to potentially play two. Normal end boards want to have Force Strix and Evil Swarm Nightmare, and that could be benefited from protection by Raider's Wing to keep SP from just automatically winning the game. But the only way you can find the room to justify the second copy of Wing is by cutting Thrust. So that's a decision you will have to make. And finally, we are on one copy of Raidraptor Heal Eagle. If all monsters you control are Raidraptors, you can special summon this card from your hand. Can be banished from the graveyard to target a Raidraptor spell trap in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Next up, we've got a new card, Swallow's Cowrie. This is a TCG exclusive that allows you to tribute a winged beast monster in your hand or face-up field to add a winged beast monster from your deck to your hand with the same level that tributed monster had. Now, this is largely seeing play in decks like Fluandereeze as copies 4, 5, and 6 of Advent. Here, it's just the most insane card in the entire universe. Next up, we have the Rum Spells. We've got Rank-A-Magic Skip Force. This allows you to target a Raidraptor Xyz monster you control, special summon from your extra deck a Raidraptor 2 ranks higher. And then during your main phase, except the card, turn this card was sent to the graveyard. You can banish this and a Raidraptor from your graveyard, then target a Raidraptor in your graveyard and special summon it. We've got Rise Up, Rank Up Magic Raidraptor's Force. This is the card that allows you to synchro an Xyz monster, and if your brain is exploding, don't worry. During the main phase of your opponent's battle phase, target 2 or more Raidraptor Xyz monsters you control or have in your graveyard, including a monster on the field. If at least 2 remain face up at resolution, special summon a Raidraptor Xyz monster from your extra deck with a rank equal to their combined ranks, and attach the targeted monsters to it as material. This is treated as an Xyz, and you can only activate 1 Rise Up, Rank Up Big Bumbless per turn. We're playing 1 copy of Soul Shave Force. Okay, so Soul Shave Force says play half your life points, target a Raidraptor Xyz in your graveyard, special summon it, special summon from your extra deck an Xyz monster 2 ranks higher than that monster using it as Xyz material. This is probably the one you've already encountered, and it's not always standard. The problem is that Raidraptor does lose to Imperm quite frequently, but it's very, very easy, via some of the cards that we've looked at already, to play a version of the setup that does not lose to Imperm if you just forego the ability to play around Nibiru at all. It puts you in this weird crossroads where you have to kind of get a soul read on your opponent if they have Imperm or Nibiru and play accordingly. But Soul Shave Force, just by existence in the list, lets you end on parts of the combo that matter through the best possible activation of Nibiru your opponent will be able to activate against every line. It also allows you to OTK when you're going second by going through Revolution Falcon, and there are some times when you really appreciate having the third rank up magic, because if your opponent summons SP Little Knight, then Tribute Lanius gains a second effect where it becomes broken. Anyway, we've got 1 copy of Raidraptor Roost. If a Raidraptor monster is special summoned from the extra deck to your field, you can add a Raidraptor spell trap from your deck to your hand, except for Roost, and then you can target 3 Raidraptor monsters that are banished or in your graveyard, place them at the bottom of your deck in any order, then draw a card. And then finally, we've got 1 copy of Raidraptor Barrage. If you control a Raidraptor, target a face-up monster your opponent controls, or if you control a Raidraptor Xyz, target a face-up card your opponent controls, negate that card's effects until the end of the turn. You can banish this card from your graveyard, target a Raidraptor monster banished in your graveyard, add it to your hand. This card is absolutely bonkers, and really pushes the limits of archetypal negation trap that they just give to random archetypes. Finally, the non-engine, we've got 3 Skullmeister, 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird, 2 Triple Tactics Thrust, 1 Triple Tactics Talents, and 3 Infinite Impermanence. A quick word on Skullmeister. Daimax was very specific, and that he wanted me to wax poetic about this card, but I have to agree with a significant amount of his conclusions. You'll notice we're not playing Ash Main, and we are playing this card. So it turns out that those two things are interlinked. First, I'm going to talk about Skullmeister. This was Ghost Bell in testing, has like this catch-all hand trap that's positioned well against both fire decks that otherwise would cook you alive if you try to go for a low-impact Ash Blossom. But in testing, a lot of people were playing Labyrinth, and not respecting Labyrinth main means you lose a lot of games to Rollback and Black Goat Laughs. It's kind of been a bust in the TCG so far, but it is just because of that bust, exemplified by the lack of Labyrinth at the UDS qualifier, that makes it such an incredibly powerful option for Labyrinth players. The answer to the rollback issue is to play DD Crow, which justifies a card called Pain Lanius, as you can use Swallow's Cowrie then to tag into one another on a dime. But Skullmeister is higher value for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's the only card in the game that beats Furniture Pitch Black Goat Laughs, which is mission critical because Black Goat targeted at the first Xyz you summon does immediately lose you the game. 2 is that Skullmeister hits everything Bell was hitting in the Fire King matchup, except Promethean Princess on field effect and like Kieran in the damage step. 3, it's not once per turn. And 4, Skullmeister plus Strangulanius is technically full combo. You don't ever want to do it, but sometimes you open up a hand and you go, PP. Anyway, let's go to the individual cards in the extra deck. We'll begin with 2 copies of Raidraptor Rising Rebellion Falcon. So this card is unaffected by other cards' effects. If it's Xyz summoned, you can destroy as many cards your opponent controls as possible. Then if it has 3 or more Raidraptor Xyz monsters with different names as material, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the combined original attack of those destroyed monsters. Once per turn, you can detach 3 materials from this card, then target a Raidraptor Xyz monster in your graveyard. This card gains that monster's effects until the end phase. This card's unbelievable. You can frequently get into it on your opponent's turn, but even getting it onto your turn is fine. That's why we're playing 2 copies. It's almost impossible for any opponent to out. And speaking of cards that are impossible to out, Raidraptor Ultimate Falcon was a Waking the Dragon target in extra decks for a significant amount of time. This card is also unaffected by other cards' effects. You can detach a material for this card. For the rest of the turn, monsters your opponent controls lose 1,000 attack, and your opponent can't activate cards or effects. If it has a Raidraptor's material, once per turn during the end phase, all monsters your opponent controls lose 1,000 attack, and if your opponent controls no face-up monsters, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. This is a Towers with Inevitability, folks. 3 copies of 4 Strix doesn't need too much of an introduction. Raider's Knight is the most important card in the deck. You can detach a material from this card to special summon a Phantom Knight, Raidraptor, or Xyz Dragon Xyz monster that is a rank higher or lower than this card by using this face-up card you control as material, but destroy it during your opponent's next end phase. And what do you know? We have a target right here. Raidraptor Brave Strix, if it has a Raidraptor Xyz material as this card as material, it gains attack equal to its rank times 100, and its native effect is that you can detach a material from this card, set a Raidraptor spell trap from your deck, and if it has a Winged Beast as material, you can detach a material to add a Rum from your deck to your hand. We've got 2 copies of Arsenal Falcon. This is a rank 7 that you can get to by ranking up to 5. Once per turn, you can detach a material from this card to special level 4 Winged Beast monster from your deck. If this card has any number of Raidraptor monsters as material, it can attack that many times during each battle phase, and if it's sent to the graveyard while it has a Raidraptor monster as material, you can special summon a Raidraptor Xyz from your extra deck, except for Arsenal Falcon, and if you do, attach this card from your graveyard to it as material. Finally, we have a Revolution Falcon, important for setting up OTKs. You can detach an Xyz material from this card. It can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each, and at the start of the damage step, if it battles an opponent's face-up special summoned monster, that attack and defense becomes 0. If it has a Raidraptor Xyz material as material, it gains this effect. Once per turn, targeted a monster your opponent controls, destroy it, inflict damage to your opponent equal to half its attack. We've got 2 copies of Y Strix. If it's link summoned, you can special level 4 Darkwing Beast monster from your deck and defense, negate its effects. It can't be used as link material. And if a Raidraptor Xyz monster's effect is activated, you get to set a Rum from deck. And if it's a quick play spell, it can be activated this turn. Finally, we've got SP Little Knight and Evil Swarm Nightmare. These do run up against your locks, but they are pretty good. I'll mention this a little later as well, but just so you know, if you're looking at this deck and thinking, oh my god, I can actually afford to play this format, and then you see SP Little Knight, don't worry. This card is only okay in this strategy. It does clean up some gummy board states where you are just sort of trading past the point of the grind game, but you definitely can replace it. There's some stuff missing from this extra deck, most notably Satellite Cannon Falcon. It's really easy to look at Satellite Cannon Falcon and think, oh my god, it's broken, it's a spell speed 4 duster, we were losing the Labyrinth in testing, we got to play this card. However, you would be wrong, because Satellite Cannon Falcon's effect does not work. There are 3 ways to summon Satellite Cannon Falcon, post Phantom Nightmare, rank Rise Up, and Arsenal Falcon, and Soul Shave or Skip Force on a Revolution Falcon. Arsenal Falcon doesn't Xyz summon the monster, so ignoring the next issue that I'm about to get into, it isn't going to trigger. Rise Rank Up summons the Xyz without materials and then attaches its targets to the summoned monster, which means that the SCF was not special summoned with the material and will not activate. And then this leaves Soul Shave or Skip Forcing a Revolution, which does work, but is so astronomically hard to set up that you might as well not even bother. It does have merit as a way to trigger Y-Strix on your opponent's turn to play through Droll, but any line that could theoretically set that up can just not do it and play better extra deck cards instead, and the card you miss out on is Glorious Bright unless you drew specifically Triple Tactics Thrust. Going into the side deck, we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Ghost Spell, a Wallow, Triple Cosmic Cyclone, a Soul Release, a Herald, a DDG, and 2 evenly matched. Anyway, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against Labyrinth, and god, it really feels like there's 2 completely different Labyrinth decks. One that gets to play Transaction Rollback in their opener, and one that doesn't. We've opened full combo, but as you can see, our opponent has a turn-ending hand trap in Droll in their grip. Here's how we play through it. We're going to begin with Tribute Lanius and then normal summon a copy of Simorgh, Bird of Perfection. We'll activate Tribute Lanius in order to send to the graveyard a copy of Raider's Wing, then overlay for a Force Strix. We'll activate Force Strix here in order to get a Bloom Vulture, at which point our opponent will Droll us. Okay, no big deal. We can special summon out the Strangle Lanius and the Bloom Vulture, and then use the graveyard effect of Raider's Wing to go into Wise Strix. Wise Strix here is going to summon another Bloom Vulture, at which point we can overlay for a copy of Raider's Knight, and activate its effect to rank up into Brave Strix. This triggers Wise Strix and allows us to add rank up magic Skip Force to our back row before we activate Brave Strix and set the trap card. From here we can activate Skip Force, targeting our Brave Strix in order to go into Arsenal Falcon, then we'll trigger the effect of the Arsenal Falcon in order to summon a Fuzzy Lanius. From here we can make a copy of SP Little Knight because we are not locked. Afterwards we are going to activate the graveyard effect of the Arsenal Falcon in order to make our first towers. From here we'll go Strangle, bringing back this Raider's Wing in order to make an Evil Swarm Nightmare before summoning the other Strangle, going into a Force Strix, which of course can't activate under Droll, passing back to our opponent, and because they control no cards, they'll take 1,000. They'll activate Stovey Torby at end step, then in draw they're going to activate Big Welcome Labyrinth in order to get Lady Lab Silver Castle, add it to hand, then activate Stovey Torby graveyard effect and transaction rollback, targeting the Big Welcome Labyrinth to get Lovely out and bounce the Stovey Torby so they can contest our back row before they even go to their main phase. They will do so and force out the barrage. They're going to go for a Pot of Extravagance, but activating a card or effect does give us a pretty sick opportunity to go for SP Little Knight and get that girl off field. They draw into an Ariana. They will use it here to grab a copy of Kuklok, then activate Kuklok and activate Stovey Torby and Lady Labyrinth of the Silver Castle. This is going to get dicey relative to Chain Links, so we're going to go for the Rise rank up magic here in order to make our Rising Rebellion Falcon. At point of resolution, we are going to go ahead and activate the effect of the Rising rank up Falcon. They'll trigger the effect of the triggered Kuklok and the activated effect of their Welcome Lab and Lady Lab, so that at point of resolution they have a set trap card so that their Lady Lab lives and allows them to make Unchained Soul Lord of Yama. This also means that they have transaction rollback in the graveyard, but they're suddenly in a very precarious position. Though they do have access to the silly Unchained line that this deck occasionally plays, we have 2 towers, and they don't have a way to resolve that fact. Like, despite the fact that they're ahead in card advantage, they aren't going to be able to out this copy of Rising Rebellion Falcon. We can just go to battle and walk over every card that they have from here on out. They're going to go Stovey Torby, they're popping our SP Little Knight, but the 2 cards that matter are already on field. We're just going to activate Ultimate Falcon, dome their monsters by 1,000, and attack. Almost every deck right now has a near innavigable grind game. What sets Raidraptor apart from most strategies is that it can participate in that grind game until it gets the privilege of no longer having to worry about it. As you saw, our opponent was way up in cards in our last game, but there was nothing native in the strategy that could out our 2 towers. Such is the case when we're playing against a deck like Runic as well. Now, this is Runic World Chalice, which is interesting, to say the least, but Josh showed me that you shouldn't count Runic out no matter what it's playing. They're going to begin with a copy of Runic Dispelling for a Hugin. They'll activate the Hugin effect in order to grab a copy of Fountain in draw phase, then activate Fountain, go into a World Chalice, and make an Almirage. That World Chalice gets checked by Skullmeister, doing its best impression of negating a Flamberge. Then they'll activate Lee, and then Runic Tip again in order to special summon a Hugin. They'll activate Fountain and Hugin in sequence, doing a great job of playing around Ash and Droll here. As a result, we're going to fire it a little after it feels really relevant. They're going to set a copy of E-Telly and pass. We will go for Cowrie and draw step. We're going to activate the Fuzzy Lanius in graveyard, grab one to hand, then normal summon this copy of Tribute Lanius. That's going to send this time a Mimicry to graveyard. Then activate the Mimicry in order to grab a Bloom Vulture. We'll activate the effect of the Bloom Vulture, summoning itself and the Fuzzy Lanius, at which point we'll make a Wise Strix and activate its effect in order to grab a Raider's Wing. We'll overlay for a Raider's Knight, and our opponent will E-Telly into a Ghost Ogre. Unfortunately, that is going to eat our battle phase, which means they're going to get another crack at it. Really bad news against a Runic strategy. We'll go Brave Strix here. That triggers the Wise Strix for a copy of Soul Shave Force. They will pop it with Runic Destruction, but we can still activate Brave Strix's effect in order to grab a Skip Force. We will do that, go for the Skip Force, and grab ourselves a copy of Arsenal Falcon. We'll activate Arsenal Falcon, detaching the Brave Strix for a Strangle Lanius, at which point our opponent will Flashing Fire the Strangle Lanius, which is honestly a pretty heads-up play. They're going to go for the Runic Fountain here, draw a couple of cards. We'll Link summon another Wise Strix so we can trigger the graveyard effect of the Arsenal Falcon in order to make Revolution Falcon and eat that Hugin. Then we'll activate Thrust in order to get the trap, set 1, and pass. Our opponent draws for turn, and they've just got every Runic spell in the game. They're going to begin with a copy of Tip, then fire the Fountain for 1. They'll draw a card, followed with a Flashing Fire to get rid of the Revolution Falcon. Unfortunately, that is going to necessitate the barrage out of us, at which point our opponent can proceed to main and set another Runic Fountain. They will go Runic Destruction, eating our last back row. We'll chain it. It's Raidraptor's Force, so we will make Ultimate Falcon here. They'll go Runic Fountain Fountain for 2 this time, drawing 2 additional cards, then firing World Chalice in order to grab another World Chalice. They'll go Slumber here to special summon, getting themselves a copy of Gary, which allows them to add back the Runic Fountain. They'll tribute summon this copy of World Chalice, then Lee to get it off field, triggering the graveyard effect of World Chalice, and it's combo time. Guard Dragon and Chosen into Imduck. Imduck here to normal summon Lee. Lee effect grabs from deck to hand a World Chalice. They'll go into Aurum, then trigger the effect of the Imduck in order to special the World Chalice, and the Guard Dragon to cycle back the Chosen, at which point they can make Ebe the World Chalice Justiciar. She's back, baby. Down comes Chungus, and then we'll activate Ebe's effect Engrave to cycle back the World Chalice, and the effect of Succession to bring back the Ebe and make Baron. Baron here targeting the Wise Strix, and another Runic Fountain enables, after the freezing curses, targeting, but not actually negating the effects of the Ultimate Falcon, another couple of draws from our opponent. They'll pass turn, and at end step, we will sink their board by a K. Now, while the Chungus does have a high attack stat, he's not going to have one for long, and our Barrage and Graveyard means that we are going to have fuel for this turn. We're going to begin with Tribute Lanius. That's going to send a Heal Eagle to the graveyard. We're going to use it to get our Rum back from grave before activating the effect of Raider's Wing and Grave and going into a Force Strix. We will target the Force Strix with the Rum, and at that point we will just make a Rising Rebellion Falcon. We can fire the effect of this monster in order to pop everything but the Chungus, who will protect himself, then activate its effect, targeting the Chungus, at which point we just win the game. We'll activate Skip Force. We will go ahead and bring back Brave Strix. We'll go to the battle phase, dome them for a hot 4K. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent's playing What Else? Snake Eye Fire King. And unfortunately for us, they are going first game 1. We have the Skullmeister, but that's all we have. Our opponent's going to begin by activating Wanted, then normal summoning a copy of Snash. They're going to activate Snash for Poplar, and then activate Popular in order to summon it from the hand, then activate its on-field effect for the original Sinful Spoils into Linkuriboh into Popular Graveyard effect. Set it in the back row, then activate Ash in order to grab a copy of Oak. And have you seen this combo before? Oak for Snash, and then activate Oak in order to get access to Flamberge. Okay, from here they are going to activate Fire King Island and get into the Fire King half of the deck. They're going to use its effect to destroy Ponix, and then afterwards they're going to activate Garunix's effect in hand, activating the on-field effects of Garunix in order to send a Kieran, then activating Kieran's effect in order to summon back Ponix. Ponix here will trigger, we'll go ahead and get Circle, and then we'll go into Sunlight Wolf into Flamberge Dragon, which of course we have the Meister for. I'm feeling good about it. Next up, Circle. Circle is going to cycle this Flamberge. They'll go into a Diabell Star and then trigger the effect of the Sunlight Wolf in order to retain access to Kieran, setting a Wanted in the process. They'll go Masquerena into Promethean Princess, into Flamberge, into Masquerena, into Ambler Whale. It's a little messy, but it does get there. They'll set one card and pass turn, and we got to make something happen. We're going to begin Cowrie. They're going to chain Wanted. The Cowrie's looking pretty good with the Mimicry Lanius in hand, but really bad as we find another copy off the top. We'll go Mimicry Lanius for a copy of Bloom Vulture. We're going to activate Bloom Vulture here, summoning out the Tribute Lanius, and then we'll activate Simorg as well. Unfortunately, before we can get to the Tribute Lanius effect, they're going to go for Kieran, triggering the effect of the Ambler Whale and the effect of the Garunix in graveyard. Garunix here and Sunlight Wolf make it to the field. Then Garunix sends a Kieran, which triggers its effect, summoning out this Ponix and destroying the Tribute Lanius before it can activate. Ponix grabs a copy of the Circle. We'll go ahead and summon a Force Strix. Our opponent will Princess, and we'll just scoop them up. So it's time for game 2, and a little weird in terms of a grip. You really don't want to see 2 of a kind, but they're 2 really good ones. We're going to go Tribute Lanius in order to send a copy of Fuzzy Lanius, and thankfully I did that and not Mimicry because that DD Crow would have made quick work of this turn. We'll go for the Fuzzy Lanius here into a Raider's Knight, and then Raider's Knight into a Brave Strix. Brave Strix is going to grab from deck to hand our Skip Force. We'll activate Skip Force, targeting the Brave Strix to make an Arsenal Falcon, at which point we can activate Arsenal Falcon in order to summon a copy of Noir Lanius from deck. We'll activate Noir Lanius and grab ourselves a copy of Heal Eagle, which we will then special. Afterwards, we're going to link off for a Wise Strix, triggering the effect of the Wise Strix and the Arsenal Falcon in sequence, making an Ultimate Falcon and a Mimicry Lanius. We're going to activate Wise Strix in order to set a copy of the Rise. We'll go for Force Strix, detaching this copy of Mimicry Lanius, and thankfully our opponent is saving this DD Crow for next game. We'll go ahead and grab this copy of Boost. Afterwards, we'll activate the Raidraptor's Force, targeting our Force Strix and ranking all the way up into Rising Rebellion Falcon. We'll go Roost in order to grab the Trap, activate Raider's Wing, pitching the card attached to the Ultimate Falcon, then activate Rising Rebellion Force a couple of times in order to end on a Bloom Vulture. Next, we're going to overlay for a Force Strix, activate the effect in order to grab a Strangle Lanius, and then finally try to reset our quick play, which point our opponent will actually commit to the DD Crow, attempting to cut us off of the Rising Rebellion for the rest of the game. Unfortunately for them, there's not going to be too much of a game because it turns on the thrust in our hand and allows us to set DD Ground, which we will fire immediately. Our opponent is going to go ahead and grab a Diabell Star, then afterwards we're going to normal summon a Popular, activating the effect of the Popular in order to get the field spell. We will Barrage, negating that, that. Why not? At which point our opponent's going to go for a Diabell Star. They're going to activate Diabell Star's effect in order to, set the pushback. That's crazy. They'll go Econ in order to take Wise Strix here, which enables an SP that was made with a monster summoned from the extra deck, which contests the Unknown, which is of course a triple tactics thrust. They'll end on a Typhon and pass. We should be able to clean it up from here, especially with a Cosmic off the top, though we do know what that card is and it's not particularly important. We'll go Roost here in order to shuffle 3 cards back, and then what do you know? We can make those 3 cards later in the turn. Let's begin with a Strangle Lanius into Tribute Lanius. We're going to use Tribute Lanius to send a copy of Heal Eagle, which, since we have the trap at the graveyard, we can use its graveyard effect to cycle it. We'll go Raider's Knight, the card we shuffled back, in order to overlay for a Brave Strix. We'll go for the Brave Strix in order to grab a copy of Soul Shave Force, and now it's time for that OTK I warned you about. We'll target this copy of Raider's Knight, overlay for a Revolution Falcon, activate its effect targeting the Typhon, pop it, and then go directly to the battle phase, getting in for well over lethal. So it's time for that all-important Game 3, and God, you hate to see this. Both players have engine and non-engine, and our opponent's going first. They're going to begin with a copy of Snash. They'll activate Snash for a popular, and as they go to summon, I fire the Drone Lockbird thinking I've won, only to walk into a crossy road. That's not fair, especially since you're using the Alt Art. That shouldn't count. It's not the same card. They'll go for popular here in order to grab a copy of Original Sinful Spoil Snake Eye, followed with Divine Temple, in order to set a Flamberge in the back row. Popular here in order to set itself, and Snash in order to summon an Oak. Oak here is going to summon from the graveyard this Snash, and then afterwards we can activate the effect of the Oak on field, setting the field spell for a Flamberge of our own. We'll go into IP Masquerena, trigger the effect of the Flamberge for 2 monsters, and then link off for a Promethean Princess. Princess is going to summon back the Flamberge, is going to set the IP Masquerena, is going to make an Amble Whale, and will end with Original Sinful Spoil Snake Eye, sending the last remaining monster for the Ponix in our hand into Sanctuary, into FKI, pop the Ponix, grab a Garunix, trigger the effect of the Garunix, send a copy of Kieran to the graveyard, and Kieran, pop the Garunix, reanimate the Ponix. This is pretty much exactly what you'd expect with an Infinite Impermanence as the cherry on top. Noir is a good draw, but it will still require a combination of really effective play and our opponent misplaying just a little bit. We're going to go for Soul Release here in order to banish a bunch of cards out of our opponent's graveyard, then normal summon the Noir Lanius, which fiends the Infinite Impermanence. Now, our opponent shotguns the IP Masquerena here, which is not a terrible idea. A significant amount of our extenders do require a monster on field, but banishing with SP does not play around Bloom Vulture, so we'll go Bloom Vulture into Mimicry Lanius, overlay for Raider's Knight, go to the battle phase to walk over the SP so we can actually activate the Raider's Knight, but don't worry, we'll get our damage another way. We'll go Brave Strix and Mimicry Lanius here. We're going to go ahead and grab a copy of Raidraptor Roost, then Brave Strix for a Soul Shave Force. Afterwards, we're going to skip all the way over to an Arsenal Falcon. We'll activate the effect of the Arsenal Falcon after resolving the effect of the Roost for our quick play, and we will summon from deck a copy of Tribute. Tribute is going to fire on field in order to send to the graveyard a copy of Heal. We'll go Soul Shave Force, targeting the Raider's Knight, summoning it out, and overlaying for a copy of Revolution. We can link both of those off for Wise Strix, and then we'll activate the effect of the Wise Strix and the effect of the Arsenal Falcon in order to make Ultimate Falcon. We're going to summon a copy of Raider's Wing from deck, which enables us to make a 4 Strix and grab a Tribute Lanius. We'll activate the effect of the Rise Rank Up Magic Raidraptor's Force in order to make a legitimately huge Rising Rebellion Dragon, and we'll dome our opponent for 8,600. So we're back with the deck, and I don't know how much clearer I can make it than that last game. Let's do the pros and cons. Firstly, the pros. 1, it's resilient. Right now, people are loaded up on hand traps, and going 1-for-1 against a deck playing 20 free summons is a miserable plan. 2, it occupies a niche that people are unprepared for. The cards that people pack for Pearly are not able to handle 2 towers, let alone 3. And 3, it's really rewarding. Nothing tickles the brain quite like figuring out on the fly how to optimally reorder your 25-step combo and staring at a field full to burst with towers. And the cons. 1, it tends to be a little bit matchup dependent. While most decks aren't great at interacting with the towers, some of them are. This is really tough because pretty much every fire deck right now gets to play a 5,800 attack point beater for free. 2, it loses 2 common staples. SP Little Knight and Super Polymerization can gut your end board's effectiveness by removing the 4 Strix before the Rum can resolve. You can play around SP doing that with Raider's Wing, but you're shit out of luck on Super Poly. Even Dimension Shifter turns most hands into Glorious Bright Pass. And 3, it's player dependent. This is a very hard deck. It can feel frustrating to be forced to do cold fusion just to compete with a room temperature IQ duelist clutching their Snash. I think this deck is very good, but it's outshined in a lot of ways by actual top-tier decks like Fire Piles and Labyrinth. Expect to see Raidraptor taking down regionals, but it's going to take some dedicated pet deckers to take it to the YCS stage. I should mention also that this deck is cheap as shit. The only expensive card we're playing is SP, and it's kinda mid, just because Fuzzy Lanius locks you so frequently. So if you've got a lot of time and not a lot of money, you might have hope this format. So that's that. Thanks so much for watching. These videos are basically subsidized by, and occasionally suggested by, my Patreons. If that's something that's interesting to you, please check out the link in the description. For now, I'd like to shout out my high-tier patrons, including Elena Tincher, Alex Perea, Allison Elliott, Brett Henry, Canner, Seaweed, Darkmaster Zork, Derp and Dragon, Devin Senpai, DJ Elephant, Enraged Peacock, Gravity, Half Miss, John Piet, Juan Cruz Avila Zati, Night Mary, Legal Rights, Luis Hernandez, Matthew M. Derezo, MBT Play Madolce, Mike Carlotti, N54 Lionheart, Puffin of Doom, Rabout, Rose Lapine, Solar Flare the Ricka Queen, Troy Says By Erasure is Gay, Vincent Storm, Who's Nick, Wonder Waffle, Your Pot of Greed Does What, and Yuki. I couldn't have done it without you.